All right, I wanted to go over your exit ticket. So far the results are not so favorable. Out of three questions, majority of you guys are missing at least two um, out of them. And if you miss the multiple choice ones, then yeah. Okay. Let me go over it. So it says some dairy farmers want to increase the amount of milk production by their cows. How can the farmers use selective breeding to increase milk production? So the correct answer was by choosing cows that are high milk producers. I'm not going to go over all of the answer choices because you've already read it, and I don't want to keep going over it. Okay, so the correct answer was this one. You wanted to make sure that they're selective breeding. So remember, for instance, if people want a dog, right? They're going to selective breed those dogs with the necessary characteristics that they want the dog to have, right? We know that it's inhumane to breed people. However, some people are selectively bred when they have kids, right? So maybe they don't like dark skinned people, so they end up having kids with someone who is light skinned, right? So yeah, if you read Genesis Begins, that book we read in our first Lit Circle group, then you would have understood what I'm talking about with that. So going back to the question, the farmer, he wants a lot of milk, right? Because he's a farmer, that's how he makes his money. So of course he's going to want to breed the cows that already perform well, who give a lot of milk. They're going to want to produce more of those kind of cows. So what better thing to do is to mate those two together in hopes that they can make those cows with bulls in hopes that they can get more milk. All right, so the next question. It's very long and it's really wordy. You had to break it down in order for you to understand it. So I'm going to pick out the key things that I thought were interesting. So it says in 1954, the predator Nile perch was introduced to Lake Victoria, right? So then it said that it became dominant fish species in the lake by the mid 1980s. The number of the species of that fish decreased as the Nile perch population increased. So as this fish increased, then this one decreased, which meant you can only think that the Nile perch were eating the chittis, right? That fish. So then it says the perch prey heavily on the chittis species that fed on algae and debris on the bottom of the lake. So then we know that the algae increased. So if the algae increased, then that meant that the chittis was either one, not being able to eat them because they were being eaten themselves, so they couldn't eat the algae. But then it told you that oxygen levels still decrease. Well, oxygen levels still would not decrease if just a perch was in there, right? It would have stayed it still would have been high, right? Because we know that algae makes oxygen, right? So you needed to make sure that you found something that could talk about. It says the surface area of gills of some chittis species has increased in just over 20 years, okay? So, which means that they don't have to come out of hiding to actually eat the algae. They have found ways to they have adapted and found ways to increase their surface area to where they can still have more oxygen and not have to go out and find it. So the correct answer was increased gill surface area has allowed the chittis to better absorb the limited oxygen in the water. That's the correct answer. D. I saw that a lot of you guys were choosing basically all of these. I saw a lot of you were choosing A, B, and C. So if you chose A, it says to change their diet to avoid competing with the Nile perch. That is something that you will automatically go to. I could see why you'd have chosen that one, but it's not the correct answer because it didn't talk about anything else in the lake changing, right? It emphasized on the algae. So that's what you should have emphasized on as well. The next one talked about how it allowed the chittis to become camouflaged and avoid being eaten. Well, they never talked about them being camouflaged. That was not in the question, so you shouldn't have picked it in the answer choices. It has allowed them to leave the lake. It never talked about them leaving the lake. So once again, you should have chosen something different. The next one, I wanted you to do a short response in 3 to 5 sentences. 1, most of you guys didn't use complete sentences. 2, some of you guys didn't give me 3, let alone 5 sentences. make sure that you are reading the directions and reading everything that I am asking you guys to do. So I wanted you to look at the picture of Lassie, right, which was on your right. I wanted you to tell me that so Lassie just had a new litter of puppies. I wanted you to observe the litter and what are their traits. Are the puppies of the same population? Explain your reasoning. We know that a population, through us just talking about everything, you know that a population is a something that has the same species, right? So some puppies have the trait of black, some have white, some have gray fur. Other puppies have the trait of black, white, and brown fur. Some puppies have spots. Despite having different traits, right? The physical features of the organism, Lassie's puppies are the same population because they are of the same species and exist in the same area at the same time. That is what makes them a population, which is what the question was asking. All right, thanks, guys. I'll have some resources up if you got these wrong that you can review and bring up your grade. Have a nice day.